Famous people who passed away in 1739. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. Dick Turpin. He was born in 1705 and he died in April 1739. His age was 33 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was execution. Dick Turpin was an English highwayman whose exploits were romanticized following his execution in York for horse theft. Turpin may have followed his father's trade as a butcher early in his life, but by early 1730s he had joined a gang of deer thieves and later became a poacher, burglar, horse theft, and killer. He is also known for a fictional 200-mile overnight ride from London to York on his horse, Black Bess, a story that was made famous by the Victorian novelist William Harrison Ainsworth, almost 100 years after Turpin's death. Turpin's involvement in the crime which he is most closely associated, highway robbery, following the arrest of the other members of his gang in 1735. Nicholas Saunderson. He was born in January 1682 and he died in April 1739. His age was 57 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was scurvy. Saunderson was a blind mathematician who made significant contributions to algebra and optics, serving as Lucasian Professor of Mathematics. According to one historian of statistics, he may have been the earliest discoverer of Bayes' theorem. He worked as Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge University, a post also held by Isaac Newton, Charles Babbage, and Stephen Hawking. In 1707, he arrived in Cambridge with his friend Joshua Dunn from Attercliffe Academy, a fellow commoner at Christ's College. During this time, he resided in Christ's and could make use of the library but was not admitted to the university. He wanted to teach, and with the permission of the Lucasian professor William Wyston, Saunderson was allowed to teach, lecturing on mathematics, astronomy, and optics. His teaching was highly appreciated. Harry Grey, 3rd Earl of Stamford. He was born in June 1685 and he died in November 1739. His age was 54 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Grey was an English nobleman involved in land management and political activities influencing regional governance. In 1709, Henry inherited the estate at Anvil in Staffordshire from a distant relative. In 1720, Henry succeeded as Earl of Stamford on the death of his first cousin, Thomas Grey, 2nd Earl of Stamford. He then inherited the Grey estates at Bradgate in Leicestershire, thus uniting the two Grey estates. Subsequently, he chose to live at Anvil Hall, allowing the Bradgate Park house to fall into disrepair. On his death, he was succeeded in the earldom by his eldest son, Henry Grey. Cosmas Damian Asam. He was born in September 1686 and he died in May 1739. His age was 52 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Asam was a Baroque artist known for his frescoes and architectural designs, often collaborating with his brother, Egypt Quirin Asam. In 1713, Asam won the Academy's first prize for his drawing of Miracle of Saint Pio. In Germany, he worked with his brother, a sculptor and stucco worker on building and decorating entirely new churches or redesigning churches in the Baroque style. Their joint projects are often attributed to the Asam brothers. Cosmas Damian died in Munich. The Asam brothers, singularly and together, were very prolific artists. They typically worked for Benedictine monasteries, though they occasionally took secular commissions. Damian's altar depicting the Vision of Saint Benedict in Weltenberg. Charles Frederick, Duke of Holstein-Gottorp. He was born in April 1700 and he died in June 1739. His age was 39 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was fever. Charles Frederick was a significant political figure whose marriage to Anna Petrovna, daughter of Peter the Great, strengthened ties with Russia. He was a prince of Sweden and Duke of Schleswig-Holstein-Gottorp, an important member of European royalty. His dynasty, the Dukes of Schleswig-Holstein-Gottorp, were a cadet branch of the ancient House of Oldenburg, which at the time was ruling Denmark, Norway. His mother was a sister of Charles XII of Sweden. Charles Frederick married a daughter of Peter the Great and became the father of the future Peter III of Russia. As such, he is the progenitor of the Russian imperial house of Holstein-Gottorp-Romanov and the patrilineal ancestor of all Russian emperors, starting with Peter III except for Catherine II. Benedicto Marello. He was born in August 1686 and he died in July 1739. His age was 52 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was tuberculosis. Marcello was an Italian composer, writer, advocate, magistrate, and teacher. Born in Venice, Benedetto Marcello was a member of a noble family, and in his compositions, he is frequently referred to anonymously as Patrizio Veneto, means a Venetian aristocrat. Although he was a music student of Antonio Lotti, Francesco Gasparini, his father wanted Benedetto to devote himself to law. Benedetto managed to combine a life in law and public service with one in music. In 1711, he was appointed a member of the Council of 40 in Venice central government, and in 1730 he went to Pola as district governor. Marcello composed a variety of music, including considerable church music, oratorios, hundreds of solo cantatas, duets, sonatas, concertos, and sinfonias. Marcello was a younger contemporary of Antonio Vivaldi in Venice. Ernest Louis, Landgrave of Hesse-Darmstadt. He was born in December 1667 and he died in September 1739. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Ernest Louis was a patron of the arts and architecture, overseeing the construction of several grand buildings in Hesse-Darmstadt. He was Landgrave of Hesse-Darmstadt from 1678 to 1739. His parents were Landgrave Louis VI of Hesse-Darmstadt and Elizabeth Dorothea of Saxe-Gotha-Altenburg. Ernst Louis's desire to emulate the French court under Louis XIV ran his country into debt. Among those patronized in this cultural milieu were the Baroque composer Christoph Graupner and the gambist Ernst Christian Hesse, also bringing into his service architect Louis-Remy de la Fosse for his extensive building program. Upon his death in 1739, His country's debt was 4 million gulden, 10 times the annual revenue. Anne-Marie Louise de la Tour d'Auvergne. She was born in August 1722 and she died in September 1739. Her age was 17 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was childbirth complications. She was a French noblewoman and the wife of Charles the Rohan. She was Marchioness of Godes and Countess of Moncha in her own right, as well as Princess of Soubise by marriage. She died aged 17 in childbirth. Her father was a son of Godefroy Maurice de la Tour d'Auvergne, Duke of Bouillon, and Marie-Anne Marsini. The latter was a niece of Cardinal Mazarin and a famous salon hostess in her day. Styled as Mademoiselle de Bouillon, she had been promised to Charles de Rohan since the age of 11. The peerage was confiscated in 1789. He was 7 years older than she and was the eldest son of Jules de Rohan, Prince of Soubise, and Angele de Melun. In 1737, she was presented at court by Marie-Sophie Anne Dodd. She was born in 1685 and she died in October 1739. Her age was 54 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. Dodd was the most famous English news seller and pamphlet shop proprietor in the 18th century. In 1708, she married a Nathaniel Dodd, who had purchased a stationer license. Nathaniel and Anne set up their shop at the sign of the Peacock outside Temple Bar in late 1711, and the shop would operate successfully for nearly half a century afterward. Nathaniel was the de jure owner of the business, but Anne's was the only name to appear on the imprints for the wholesale and retail sale of newspapers and pamphlets. Nathaniel would purchase newspapers and pamphlets in bulk from printers and then sell them to the street hawkers, as well as offer them to public sale in the shop at Peacock. In October 1723, Nathaniel died and Anne became the legal as well as effective owner of the business. François Charlotte d'Aubigné. She was born in May 1684 and she died in October 1739. Her age was 55 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. Niece of Madame de Maintenon, François Charlotte served as governess to the children of King Louis XIV and contributed to the education of nobility. François Charlotte was the only child of Charles d'Aubigné and Geneviève Piettre, who were married on 23 February 1678, but they were poor. Her parents appealed to the future wife of Louis XIV, the Marquise de Maintenon, to help her education. Maintenon agreed to help on the condition that François Charlotte would be raised as Maintenon wished and would marry whom Maintenon chose for her. As a result, Madame de Maintenon was later to make her brother's only child the heir to the Maintenon estate, which she had owned since 1674. Antonio José da Silva. He was born in May 1705 and he died in October 1739. His age was 34 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. A prominent playwright known as the Jew, da Silva wrote satirical operas and was executed during the Inquisition for his Jewish faith. His works bear the title operas because, though written mainly in prose, they contain songs which Silva introduced in imitation of the true operas, which then held the fancy of the public. He was also a lyric poet of real merit, combining correctness of form with a pretty inspiration and real feeling. His plays were published in the first 2 volumes of a collection entitled Teatro Comico Português, which went through at least 5 editions in the 18th century, while the Alle Malia Lora appeared separately in some 11 editions. His comedies gave a truthful, interesting picture of the 18th century society. Francesco Gali Biana. He was born in December 1659 and he died in January 1739. His age was 79 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Biana was an influential stage designer and architect, celebrated for his elaborate Baroque theatre designs. His knowledge of architecture and perspective was considerable, but he excelled in figures. Francesco worked at Piacenza, Parma, and Rome, and then became ducal architect at Mantua. After a stay in Genoa and Naples, he was called to Vienna, where he built a large theatre. He worked successively for the emperors Leopold I and Joseph I, and was invited to Madrid by Philip V, who appointed him as his principal architect. Francesco was known for his theatrical achievements in scenic design. He was the first member of the Biana family to build theaters as well as to design sets. In 1700, he completely renovated the theater in Hofburg, Vienna for Emperor Leopold I. Juan de Galaris. He was born in May 1683 and he died in November 1739. His age was 56 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Spanish Premonstratensian canon, regular, and a prelate of the Catholic Church in what is now the Dominican Republic and Colombia. He served as Archbishop of Santo Domingo from 1731 to 1737 and as Archbishop of Bogota from 1737 to 1739. He became abbot of the Premonstratensians. He went on to serve as rector of a school in Salamanca and a professor of theology at the University of Salamanca. In September 1729, he was selected by King Philip V to be Archbishop of Santo Domingo. His appointment was confirmed later that year by Pope Benedict XIII and was consecrated in April 1731. He remained in Santo Domingo until 1737, when he was selected to be the next Archbishop of Santa Fe and Nueva Granada. John Joseph of the Cross. He was born in August 1654 and he died in March 1739. His age was 84 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Italian Catholic priest and professional member of the Order of Friars Minor, who hailed from the island of Ischia. He had a reputation for austerity and for the gift of miracles, and served as an voice master. He was beatified in 1789 and later canonized in 1839. He entered the Order of Friars Minor in Naples before he turned 16 and assumed the religious name of John Joseph of the Cross. He was the first Italian to follow the reform movement of Peter of Alcantara. In 1674, he was sent to found a convent for the order at Afila in Piedmont and assisted in the actual construction itself. He was ordained to the priesthood, much against his will, it should be noticed, and as the superior performed the lowliest tasks. Edmond Martin, he was born in December 1654 and he died in June 1739. His age was 84 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. Martin was a Benedictine monk known for his scholarly works on church history, rites, and ancient manuscripts. In 1672, he entered the Benedictine Abbey of Saint Remy at Reims, a house of the congregation of Saint Maur. Owing to his zeal for learning, however, he was sent to Saint Germain to receive training under Deschéry and Mabillon, and also to assist in the primarily work connected to the new edition of the Church Fathers. Thenceforth, he devoted his life to the study of subjects connected with history and liturgy, residing in various monasteries of his order, especially at Rouen, where he received sympathetic cooperation of the prior of Saint Marthe. Anton Maria Marigliano. He was born in September 1664 and he died in March 1739. His age was 74 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a master sculptor, known for his detailed and expressive religious works in the Baroque style. He was known primarily for his wooden statues. He was born in Genoa, where he led an important workshop. He is called also Maraggiano by some ancient authors. He pioneered important developments in this style of sculpting in wood, parallel to those driven by Filippo Parodi in marble sculpture and Domenico Piola in painting. His workshop produced many typical religious sculptures representing Madonnas, figures of saints, and narrative scenes from Bible. These are now preserved in many churches and sanctuaries throughout Liguria and also in Spain. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.